The night my father dragged me across the ballroom floor by my hair, 200 people watched, and not one of them tried to stop him. They watched because he was General William Mercer, a decorated American hero. I was only his daughter, Claire Mercer, the woman he had spent 20 years teaching everyone not to believe. But what my father did not know was that I had come to his retirement gala prepared. Every camera in the room was recording. Every lie he had buried was about to rise. And before midnight, the medals on his chest would become evidence. Let me start 3 months earlier. I was 34 and worked as a civilian financial analyst near Washington, D.C. My younger brother, Daniel, was an Army captain stationed overseas. He was everything our father wanted: obedient, polished, and willing to protect the Mercer name. I had left home at 18 and rarely returned. People assumed I was ungrateful. The truth was simpler. My father controlled everything: money, friendships, careers, even the words we used at dinner. When he lost his temper, my mother called it stress. When he struck a wall beside my head, she called it discipline. When I finally left, he told everyone I was unstable. For years, I built a quiet life. Then Daniel called me at 2 in the morning. His voice was shaking. He said he had found irregular payments connected to a military housing contract. Millions of dollars had been sent through shell companies. One company belonged to our father's closest friend, Colonel Grant Hale. Another was registered to a trust in my mother's name. Daniel believed soldiers' housing funds had been stolen. Families were living with mold, broken heating, and unsafe wiring while someone was getting rich. He had copied the records onto a small black flash drive. Then he said the sentence that changed everything. "Claire, Dad knows I found it." The line went silent. The next morning, my mother called and said Daniel had been injured in a training accident. He survived, but he was unconscious in a military hospital. My father told me not to visit. He said my presence would upset the family. That was the first clue that Daniel's accident was no accident. I went anyway. Daniel had a fractured shoulder, a head injury, and bruises that did not match the official report. A nurse quietly told me he had been admitted several hours before the time written in the paperwork. When I entered his room, his eyes opened for only a few seconds. He could not speak clearly, but he squeezed my hand and whispered one word: "Bluebird." A bluebird had been our childhood hiding place, a loose floorboard beneath the window seat in our grandmother's house in Virginia. Our grandmother had died the previous year. The house was empty and waiting to be sold. I drove there that night through heavy rain. The old place smelled like dust and cedar. I lifted the window seat, pried up the board, and found the black flash drive wrapped in one of Daniel's childhood socks. There was also a letter addressed to me. Daniel wrote that if anything happened to him, I should contact Special Agent Elena Ruiz at the Defense Criminal Investigative Service. He warned me not to trust anyone in our father's circle. The drive contained contracts, bank transfers, emails, inspection reports, and photographs of damaged military homes. It showed that Colonel Hale's company had received federal money for repairs that were never completed. But the most shocking file was an audio recording. My father's voice was clear. He was ordering Daniel to destroy the evidence. Daniel refused. My father then said he could ruin Daniel's career, his marriage, and his life with one phone call. I sat alone in the dark house and listened 3 times. I had spent years wondering whether I had imagined my father's cruelty. That recording gave his cruelty a shape, a date, and a voice. The next morning, I contacted Agent Ruiz. She met me in a crowded coffee shop. She did not promise an arrest. She told me the evidence was serious, but powerful people protect themselves through layers of paperwork and loyal subordinates. She needed proof that my father knew where the money went and personally benefited from it. Then she gave me a warning. "If he suspects you, he may come after you." I almost laughed. He had been coming after me my entire life. 2 weeks later, my father invited me to his retirement gala at a private military club in D.C. The invitation looked like an olive branch. I knew it was a test. I accepted. I wore an emerald green dress because my father hated bright colors. He believed women in military families should look elegant but invisible. For the first time, I wanted him to see me clearly. Before the gala, Agent Ruiz fitted a tiny microphone inside my necklace. 2 investigators entered as catering employees. Another sat among the guests. We knew my father might confess if he believed he had cornered me. The ballroom was filled with officers, politicians, contractors, and wealthy donors. My father's medals shone beneath the lights. People stood when he entered. My mother kissed my cheek and whispered, "Please don't embarrass us tonight." I whispered back, "I won't." "He will." During dinner, my father gave a speech about honor, sacrifice, and loyalty. Then he raised a glass to Daniel, calling his injury an unfortunate accident. That was when I stood. My hands were trembling, but my voice was steady. I asked why the accident report listed the wrong time. The room became quiet. My father smiled and told everyone I was emotional. I asked why Colonel Hale's company had received $12 million for repairs that never happened. The smile disappeared. Colonel Hale moved toward the exit, but 2 investigators blocked the door. My father stepped close to me. Through his teeth, he ordered me to sit down. I asked him where my mother's trust had gotten $3 million. My mother dropped her glass. Then my father made the mistake we had been waiting for. He said, "Daniel should have destroyed that drive when I ordered him to." A wave of whispers moved through the room. He realized what he had admitted. His eyes dropped to my necklace, and he saw the small microphone. His face changed. He grabbed me by the hair and pulled me down. I hit the floor beside a fallen glass. Guests shouted, but for one terrible second, nobody moved. They were frozen by rank, reputation, and disbelief. My father bent close and said I had always been a disgrace. I looked up at him and said, "No, Dad, I am the witness." Agent Ruiz entered with federal investigators. They pulled him away from me and placed him in handcuffs. Colonel Hale was detained near the door. My mother stood in the center of the ballroom, surrounded by broken glass and people who finally saw the family she had helped him hide. But the story did not end there. My father claimed I had manipulated the recording. His attorneys said I was a bitter daughter seeking attention. Several guests suddenly forgot what they had heard. For a few days, I feared he might escape again. Then Daniel woke up. He told investigators that Colonel Hale had confronted him in a parking garage after my father's threat. Hale shoved him into a concrete barrier and staged the scene to resemble a training accident. Daniel had secretly backed up the financial records before hiding the flash drive. There was one more surprise. My mother asked to meet me. I expected tears and excuses. Instead, she brought a locked metal box containing 20 years of my father's private ledgers. She admitted she had signed trust papers without asking questions, but later realized the account was being used to hide stolen money. She had kept copies because she was afraid he would blame everything on her. She wanted immunity. Part of me wanted to refuse. She had watched him hurt us. She had protected his image every time we needed protection from him. So I told Agent Ruiz the truth. My mother was both a victim and an accomplice. What happened next had to be decided by evidence, not by my anger. That was the moment I understood the difference between revenge and justice. Revenge would have meant destroying everyone who had failed me. Justice meant telling the whole truth, even when the truth did not perfectly match my pain. My father and Colonel Hale were indicted on charges related to fraud, conspiracy, obstruction, and assault. Hale accepted a deal and testified that my father had controlled the scheme. My mother returned the money and received probation after cooperating. Several officials lost their positions. The stolen funds were recovered and placed into an independent program to repair military housing. At the sentencing hearing, my father still looked proud. Even without his uniform, he sat straight as if the courtroom belonged to him. The judge allowed me to speak. I told the court about the families who slept beside mold-covered walls. I spoke about Daniel waking in a hospital, terrified that telling the truth had ruined his life. I spoke about the little girl I had once been, learning to stay silent whenever her father entered a room. Then I looked directly at him. "You taught us that loyalty meant protecting you," I said, "but real loyalty belongs to the people you promised to serve. You wore honor on your chest while hiding shame in our home." For the first time in my life, he looked away. He was sentenced to federal prison. The newspapers called it the fall of a decorated general. To me, it was not a fall. It was simply the moment the mask came off. Daniel recovered and left the army with an honorable record. He later joined a nonprofit that supports whistleblowers and military families. My mother moved to a small town and began counseling. We speak sometimes. Forgiveness has not come easily, but at least our conversations are honest now. As for me, I kept the emerald dress. The seam was torn, and a dark stain from the spilled wine never came out. I could have thrown it away, but I did not. It reminds me of the night everyone finally saw what I had always known. My father believed power meant making people afraid to speak. He believed his title could silence evidence, his medals could cover corruption, and his reputation could erase what happened behind closed doors. He was wrong. The last toast at his retirement gala was supposed to celebrate his legacy. Instead, it ended it. And when the ballroom doors closed behind him, I did not feel like the frightened daughter he had dragged to the floor. I stood up, fixed my torn green dress, and walked out as the woman who had finally pulled a general down with nothing but the truth.